Cecily. Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of the flowers is more the gardener's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language, and I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised with you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. And you must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish that Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. I think we might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I am sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I'm not sure that even I could have any effect on a character that, by his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should surely forget all about them.
Memory, dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels the Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. But I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
Well, the good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble. This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you I trust well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to go on a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, I know that, dear Miss Prism, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
Cecily, I hope you have not been inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. I suppose Mr. Worthing has not returned from town yet?
We do not look for him till Monday afternoon.
Yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all means that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
Merely an allusion drawn from the pagan authors. will no doubt see you both at Evansall.
I think, dear doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. I find that I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of Rupee you may omit. It's somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic things have their melodramatic side.
Geography, horrid German.
A Mr. Earnest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, he seemed very disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were out in the garden. He seemed very anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here, and I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he'll just look like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I am sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily, and you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
I'm not really wicked at all. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you're not, then you have been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh. Well, I have been rather bad.
I'm glad to hear it.
Now that you mention it, I have been rather reckless in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That's terribly disappointing. For I'm obliged to go up by train first thing Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I of course know how important it is not to keep a business engagement, if anyone wants to retain the sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your immigrating.
About my what?
Your immigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will be requiring any neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you had to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well. The accounts I've heard on the next world in Australia aren't particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
I should have remembered that when one is going to be leading an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you, but might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I've had a buttonhole first.
A Marshal Niel?
No, I'd much sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you're like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things.
Well, Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I would care to catch a very sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear doctor. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neo-dualistic a phrase. But the person, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. A man should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
Is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
Often I've been told not even to her.
That depends upon the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruit. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading his life of pleasure?
No. Dead.
Your brother Earnest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolences, but you at least have the consolation of knowing that you're always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Earnest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the last?
No. He died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I received a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel last night.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. Nobody's perfect. I myself am susceptible to drafts. Will the internment take place here?
No. He seemed to have expressed some desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That hardly points to a very serious state of mind in the last. You will no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this terrible domestic affliction next Sunday. Yes, my sermon on the meaning of man in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful or, in the present case, distressing. I've preached at harvest celebrations, christenings, days of confirmation, and festival days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent Among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much stricken by some of the analogies that I drew.
Ah, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right? I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often had to speak to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But the christening isn't for any child, dear doctor. I am very fond of children. No, the fact is that I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But do you have any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. But I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way. Or if you think I am a little too old now.
Oh, not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehension. Sprinkling is all that's necessary, or indeed advisable. Our weather's so changeable. Is there any particular time in which you want the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Oh, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred in one of the outlying cottages on your very own estate. Oh, Mr. Jenkins, the carter, a very hard-working man.
But I don't see any fun in being christened with other babies. It would be childish. How would 5:30 do?
Oh, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I do not intend to intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I merely beg you to not be too bowed down by grief. What is often seen as bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I am so glad to see that you are back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily.
My child.
Uncle Jack, what is the matter? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache. And I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is waiting in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Earnest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
That is nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are joyous tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems peculiarly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room? I don't know what this all means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come down from town to apologize for everything that I have ever done to you, and to let you know that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his being here disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend Mr. Bunbury. We so often. And surely there must be some good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He has been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
I admit that the faults are all on my side, and that I find Brother John's coldness towards me particularly painful. I was expecting a much more enthusiastic welcome, considering that this is the first time that I have ever been here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Earnest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's wonderful, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I say we leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you young scoundrel! You must leave here at once. I don't allow a Bunbury here.
I've put Mr. Earnest things in the room next to yours. I suppose that's all right.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon box.
Afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anybody call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You will not talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is very childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's staying with you as a guest in your house for a week. I call it grotesque.
You will certainly not be staying in my house for a whole week as a guest or anything else.
Well, I certainly wouldn't leave you when you're in such a deep state of mourning. It'd be very unkind. And I assume that if I were in a deep state of mourning, I would like to think that you would stay as well. I'd think it very unfriendly if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but you must be swift about it. I've never seen someone take so long to change with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that is far better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally overdressed, I always make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05 train. And I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But a momentary separation from one to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I don't offend you if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Your frankness does you great credit, Earnest. If you allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Earnest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Earnest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I've looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
Tell her to come round next week, at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
I think Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew that you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. And you will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
The last 3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But my own darling Cecily, when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes. You've wonderfully good taste, Earnest. It's the excuse I've given you for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters in.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly to remind me of that, Earnest. I remember all too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Well, can I see them?
Oh no, you couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 that you wrote to me after I had broken off our engagement were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was the engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of March. You can see the entry if you'd like. broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why was the engagement broken off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. I'm very hurt indeed, Cecily, to hear that you broke off the engagement, especially when the weather was so charming.
Oh, it would have hardly been a very serious engagement, Ernest, if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
Cecily, you will never break off our engagement again, will you?
Oh, I don't think I could now, especially since I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is still the question of your name.
My name?
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has been a very girlish dream of mine to love someone with the name of Earnest. There is something about that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But what name?
Any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like Algernon.
But my own sweet, loving, little darling Cecily, I really don't see why you can oppose to the name of Algernon. It's a very aristocratic name. Why, more than half the chaps that end up in the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name was Algernon?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, is thoroughly practiced in all the rites and rituals of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book. So you can imagine how much he knows.
Perfect. I must speak with him at once on a most important christening. I mean most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since the 14th of February, and I've only met you for the first time today, I think it is very hard that you should leave me for so long of a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back as soon as I can.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
And Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack and his philanthropic work in London. I don't like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? Well, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How kind of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then it is all quite settled then, is it not?
I hope so.
this might be a favorable opportunity of my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think it is quite as it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. I feel it makes him so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is a part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all. I am quite fond of being looked at, Gwendolen.
You're here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed?
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I'm bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help but expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do. I believe that whenever one has something unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
But it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm afraid to say that they have not been on very good terms for a very long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. In fact, now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, I see there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I fear there is some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear on the Saturday Morning Post at the latest.
I'm afraid that you are under some misconception, Gwendolen. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Yes, it certainly is very curious, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. I feel one should always have something sensational to read when in the train. I am terribly sorry, dear Cecily, if this is any possible disappointment to you, but I'm afraid that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Earnest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy might have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest to me, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Earnest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It's obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From one of the tops of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers left in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I can't see how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, that is what the newspapers call an agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, or so I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar's not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy any machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths which I will not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your very valuable time. No doubt you have other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Earnest! My own Earnest!
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may. I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is present around your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack. Jack? Oh, here is Earnest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens! Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew, for the gentleman who is now embracing you is my dear cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrieff.
Algernon Moncrieff? Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wrong Cecily.
My sweet Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There's just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Earnest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Earnest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Earnest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. I've never been reduced to such a painful position in all my life, and I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Earnest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never had a brother of any kind?
Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, dear Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunbring, I suppose.
Yes? And what a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is. Why, it's the best bunbury I've had in my entire life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Well, that is absurd. Everyone has a right to bunbury wherever anyone chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that.
A serious Bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something in life if they want to have any amusement. I happen to be serious about bunbury. What you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down into the country quite as often as you used to, dear Algie. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? Now you can't disappear up to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that is all. I love her.
I wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, there is certainly no chance of you ever becoming engaged to Miss Cardew.
And there is no possibility of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
Well, if it was my business, I certainly wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only stockbrokers ever do, and that merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One must always eat muffins calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I must say it is perfectly heartless of you to eat muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. When I'm in great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately can tell you, I refuse absolutely everything, but food and drink. Presently, I am eating because I am unhappy, and I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy manner.
Have some tea cake. I hate tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
You just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That much is true, but the muffins are the same.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having dinner first. I never go unless I've had my dinner first. It's absurd. Nobody ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble myself to be christened this afternoon. I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I ever was christened by anybody. I think it extremely probable I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in many years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know that my constitution can handle it. If you are unsure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. You need hardly forget that someone very near to you was very nearly carried off in Paris last week by a severe chill.
Yes. But you said it yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left, and I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth do you allow it to be served up for your guests? What ideas of hospitality you have.
I don't want you here. Why won't you go?
I haven't finished my tea. And there's still one muffin left.